Well, howdy. We're going to be building an Alpha from Estes. This is what your kit will have. So if you look at your directions over here, it will list everything. So we have A, which is your motor mount tube. We have B, which will open up here. That's your hook in here. So let me open that up quick. So you'll have a little metal hook. That's part B. And it's kind of funny shaped. So there's B. So A, B. C is your adapter ring. And then D is your parachute. We'll leave it in the little packet for right now. And then E is your tube. F is your fins. G is your nose cone. H is your little shock cord, the elastic in here. Your giant rubber band. And then your launch lug. So those are your parts, okay? So that is just an overview of what's in our kit. So when we open our kit, you'll have your directions. It's broken down pretty systematic. So up here is basically your guide. We'll cut this out so that we wrap it around your tube here in a second. This holds your shock cord. And then direction 1, prepare fins. So we'll do that quick and then we'll continue, okay? So here's our fins, and we're to sand them with some sandpaper, and we'll go with the grain, which is this way. I'm just starting with a little piece of sandpaper. It is 220 grit, and it's just this. It says to use it in a little sanding block, but I never do. Usually because I don't have a sanding block, but all we're doing is knocking the wood down just a little to make it smooth. So and then we'll flip them over, do the other side. And so there's our 220, and then I'm going to jump up to, this is 400, and again we're just going over it just to make them a little smoother, so you can hear the difference a little bit. And the nice thing about balsa wood is it's very soft, so it doesn't take a lot to get it sanded down. And then our last one, I got some 600 here, which is kind of overkill, but I like very smooth fins. And they'll slowly break apart maybe. Balsa is very light, so. Okay, so, whoop. And our fins will start popping out of our piece. Okay, so we'll cut them out here in just a sec. So next it says to cut them out. So you can use a little razor blade. I have a little hobby knife here. And just run along there. And run along here. The fins are laser cut, so they pretty much, and then they just leave just a little spot on them just to hold them into the larger piece. So you just need to find where they're held. So there's our 3 fins for our rocket. Okay. Now, it doesn't say to do this, but if we grab our sandpaper, we want to do just a little thing here. Put our sandpaper down, and we want to get where these lasers leave our little pieces of wood here. See those little bright spots? We want those sanded down so they're even with everything else. So just set them on there and just a couple rubs. And you can see that it's taking that little raised area right off. And again, we can do 400 and 600 and just get them done, okay? Now, when you look at these, this will be the leading edge of our fin along here. So when we glue it, it will be like this on our rocket. So this is our leading edge, and I'm going to sand those down just a little bit to give them curves so they're not square, okay? So I'll do that, and then we'll show you the next part, okay? Okay, so I'm going to sand this leading edge, and so I'm just going to take, and I don't know if you can see this, but I don't have it upright. I have it off to the edge just a little bit, and we'll just go down just a little bit, and then turn it the other way. And all we're doing is making this edge so it's not a hard square. We're rounding the edges basically, and we can kind of go that way a little bit. And all we're doing is taking the edge off. So if we look at this, on this edge, these are squared, this is squared, this edge is rounded. And you can feel it. So. And all this is going to do is allow us to have just a little more aerodynamics just on that leading edge. So, a little more performance. If you want, you can take and make them a razor's edge, but from us, it's just going to give us a little softer edge. Okay, so that part's done. Now we'll work on the motor. So we'll be working on the motor mount now. This is your motor tube. This is what our motor will be in. And we're just going to put a couple little marks on it. So if you look at your directions, basically we'll mark at 1 inch and at 3/8 of an inch and then 2.5 inches. So we'll just call this our bottom, our top, and we will set it here just to the end of our little ruler. And I'm just going to draw, so at 3/8 of an inch, I'll put our first mark. So looking at our ruler, it doesn't really matter if I can go off of here. So 1, 2, 3, there's 3/8. So I just put a little mark, and I'm using a mechanical pencil because it holds on the paper a little easier. So 1, 2, 3, there's 3/8. I'm just making a mark, and then at 1 inch. So right there. And then clear up here at 2.5. So there's 1 inch, 2 inch, 2.5. So way up here. So if you look at our body tube here, we have our 3/8 of an inch, our 1 inch, and our 2.5 inch marks. Okay? That's pretty easy. Now, this top mark, we want to make this 1/8 of an inch wide, which I'm just guessing will be about there. And I can measure it down here if I really want to see if it's 1/8 of an inch. So I put it right there, and that's 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so with that, we take our little hobby knife and we make sure don't stab yourself. All we're doing is going to put a little slit in here. And of course I have a hobby knife that the tip's been cut, so broke off. So I'm just going to slowly, there we go, get it in there. So what we're doing is making that 1/8 of an inch wide. And you can wiggle it just a little bit so it's a little loose. You don't need it to have it perfectly tight, because what we're going to do is we're going to take and put our rod in it. Okay. So that sets in there like that. Okay. Now we gotta actually do a little gluing in here. So first, before we glue, we're going to make sure this fits over there easy, and then it just slides down, and we're going to take it down to the 1 inch mark. So my other mark that I had is right there, so I know that that's right there. Okay, and it slid on there really easy, so that's going to hold our motor. So now we get to put a little glue there, so we'll bring it up just a little bit because we want the glue underneath it. Okay, so I'm using just some Elmer's wood glue, and we're just going to run just a little bit around here. This is a little thick. Yeah. There we go. There we go. Good. Now, you don't need a ton, so I just have a little bit there. And I'm just going to touch it with my finger just a little, spread it around a little bit so there's a little bead all the way around. And now you know why my table is paper. I just cover it so I can just keep on working without having to. And the second you start pushing, keep on pushing until it gets down there where you need it. Okay, so there it is at my mark, and then I'm just going to run this around. You don't want it on the outside of the green here, because this will set up in our rocket, but we need it on this edge too. So we will lay a little bead here, and then I'll just run it around with my finger and then wipe it off. And you don't need to run it all the way around because we're just going to smear it so it's down in there. Okay. Now I have just a little bit on this outside edge. I'm just going to wipe it so it's gone. I don't want any buildup there. Okay. And then you just set this aside and let it dry. And we'll work on a different part while that does it. But this has to dry. It's going to take a couple hours. So just set it aside. I usually set it upright so that it doesn't roll around or stick to the table or anything. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to cut out our fin guide. So on our paper up here, this little thing here, we're going to mark our body tube. So we just cut it. And the only thing that needs to be exact is this edge, and these ones pretty close, but it doesn't need to be perfect, because all we're doing is marking off of it. But the alignment's important, so. So we have our piece of paper. I'm just going to trim this up a little. Get rid of some extra. So on your paper here, you have a fin, launch lug, fin, and then these alignment marks. So we take our body tube, this, and we wrap it around it, and you line these marks on this side to those marks there. That way we know it's square on your rocket tube, okay? Now in your directions, it says to use a little piece of clear tape to attach this side first, but if you do that and these aren't lined up, you'll never get them to line up. So it's actually easier if you just sit here and get these lined up first before you try to tape anything. And those are lined up. Okay, so I'm just going to hold it with a finger for a second. Grab me a little piece of tape, and I'm not actually going to tape it to my body tube because all I want is that these are the important things. These little lines here and here, those are what are important. So I'm just going to glue it, tape this across there. Okay, and this line is straight. Then I can slide this down. If I taped it to the thing, I would be able to slide it up and down. Okay, and then grab my pencil, and we're going to mark on both ends, just where those arrows point. So one there, turn it, mark here, one there, and then this is our launch lug. One there, and I'm just going to write L below it, so if I look at it, I know it says launch lug, and I won't get it confused with a fin when I'm gluing stuff. And there, so our 3 fins are on, okay? Now, I'm going to pull this off. So now all I have to do is, you can't quite see them, but basically there's a little mark here and here, and I just need to line those up. And the easiest way is with a door frame or a piece of angle metal. So, one second, and I'll show you. Okay, so instead of using a door frame, this is basically act as my door frame, okay? I'm going to turn it a little bit, set my thing in here, and my body tube will lay right into that groove. And then I just need to turn it until I see where I have to these little marks. And I just set it right to the edge here, so I have a mark here and a mark here right along this edge, and just turn it just a little right there, and then just squeeze just slightly so it's held in place, and then I just run a line along that. And then just continue. Now if you're a door frame, you do the same thing. So that picture shows you just put it into where you have the door frame and a raised edge. So you got a little square piece, and you just put your body tube in it, okay? And that pencil lead is not extended out, so I'll just grab my other pencil and continue. And these you really don't have to go all the way up. They need to go down to one end because this will be the bottom of our rocket. And we just need to know where we're putting our fins. So, and then when we look at this, we'll have little lines here, and we'll just be able to use that as our guide. And this is our launch lug, so this one needs to go up a little higher than our others. So when we get ready to glue fins on, we just basically use that as a edge to lead it on, and it keeps our fins being straight instead of angled off. Okay, so that's what that's for. Now, something that I forgot to say beforehand, take this body tube and just grab a little sandpaper and go over it, because it's covered with a very slick surface and we want a little bit of rough. So I just ran over it with some sandpaper. I can still see my paper marks, but that will let me and the glue stick better. So it's not really shiny. It just doesn't need to be very, like, you can just see how much I just did, and that's more than enough. We don't want to take it completely off, but we want something that the glue's going to stick to, okay? So our next thing is we're going to apply a little bit of glue. So we're going to take one of our fins and we look at them, and if we look at this, will be the root edge. This is what goes against the rocket. This is our leading edge. That's what the air is going to hit. And then our trailing edge, okay? So we're going to take and glue it to our rocket like that. Okay? Well, go off this side and see if it's a little better for you to see. Okay? So I'm going to take a little bit of wood glue. And you don't need a ton, so don't squeeze too hard, which is why I'm sitting here. And we're just going to lay a little bead there. Okay? And I'm just dabbing it because it's on the edge a little bit. So, okay, so on this leading, I'm going to turn this a little bit that way. So on this edge here, there's just a little bead of glue. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to grab our little rocket, and we're going to find one of our fins lines. We're going to look at our fin line here, and we're going to take this and we're just going to lay it right there and touch it down, and then we're just going to put just a little bit of pressure on it and then pull it off, and then just kind of dab that glue a little bit around, and then we're just going to leave this open and let these dry for a couple minutes. What this does is this will absorb into the paper just a little. This will absorb into the fin. Then we're just going to add a little more glue to it, and we'll get a stronger bond out of it instead of me just sticking it on there and walking away, okay? So I'm going to take and let this set for a couple minutes. And you just don't want that to stick to anything, so I'm just going to leave it right there so it's just up in the air a little bit. And we'll be back in just a minute while we wait. It's intermission time. Okay, so it's been a couple minutes. This is fairly dry. You know, it's still there just a little bit, so we'll let it keep on going. I just wanted to show you that it's just slowly drying. Okay, so we'll set that back there, and this will start to turn a little lighter color and start to kind of be almost translucent. So we'll just give it a little longer. Okay. Okay, so looking at this is pretty much dried, and this is just about dried. There's just a couple little spots. So I'm going to take another little bit of glue. See, didn't even stick to anything. And we're just going to lay another little bead along here. Have a real light thin layer. It doesn't need to be a lot. So we have just a little bit of bead there. And then I'm going to take and I can see where my line is. We're just going to line it up again and stick it on there. Now, if you look at your paper, bring this over here. If I set this up, this is how it's supposed to be, okay? One there, one over here. And if you're looking from the top down, you can see if you're lined up. I find it a lot easier, especially on small stuff, just to look at it this way. I'm going to try to line it up, okay, for you to see. And what I want is it straight up and down from the tube. I don't want it bent off to one edge like that. So I'm just going to look at it for me and line it up so it's pointing straight up. Okay. As long as it's pointing straight up, which I had pretty much lined up already, it is good to go. Okay. So I am going to take and I let you look at this down the rocket tube. See my line? It's kind of just a little thin line there. My fins are lined up on it, And then if I bring this up to where, I've got to get this lined up where I, kind of there. Try and get it, let's just do that, there we go. So, if I brought that up where you can see it, it's lined straight up and down with my rocket, and I can see that my pencil line goes through, and if I eyeball it, just looking straight down it, I can see that it's lined up, okay? And it's not off to one edge this way or that way, okay? And then, if you just take your finger, you'll see just a little bead of glue there, just kind of just barely gently flatten it out a little bit, okay? All we want is so that that glue's not big huge lumps anywhere, okay? So, if you look down that tube, I'm probably a little too close to my camera, but oh well. That is lined up. Now, I'm just going to give it just a little bit of pressure and make sure it's all stuck down well. And then this, I'm just going to set maybe right there. Keep it upright. Prop something against it so that it's pinned between two things, so it's upright. I'm just going to close my glue because we're going to let this dry. So this is where you take and go have dinner, lunch, whatever. Go do something else for a couple hours. But that's just going to sit there like that. And it's upright. And it's pinned so it won't roll. And that fins straight up and down, so gravity's just going to push downward. Instead of, if it's off a little bit, it's going to flop over all the way because gravity's going to grab it, okay? So we're just going to let that dry for a while, and I'll be back later. And I'm actually going to turn that just a little bit there. On the camera it looks a little angled, but it's not, so I'll show you later. Okay, so it's been a couple hours. If you take a look at this, the glue is dried. So we're going to put on the next fin. So, same like the last one. And we'll take and put our wood glue on. Look at our line again, line it up on our line, and lay it down, pull it off, kind of smash that around a little bit so we got some surface. It's a little thick right there, so we'll just wipe that extra off. So we got just a little bit of glue on there, and we will let those dry for a bit. Now, when we do this one, we're going to have it up in the air just a little bit because that fin needs to be upright. So we need to elevate the whole body. So I will find something and be back in a minute. Okay, so it's been a little bit. And we're just going to apply a little more glue. That's dried. That's fairly dry. And I found just a couple little wooden sticks I got here that I'm going to put it up on. So it's about a ½ inch tall. So if you got something that's kind of narrow, it doesn't even be narrow as long as it's just, that holds that fin up. So it's, the top fin is not on an angle. Because if you try to let it cure while it's on an angle and not straight up and down, it's just going to fall off. So once again, we're going to take and line it up so that it's upright, and if I look at it, it's not off to one side, and this one is off just a little bit, so we're just going to pull it over just a little. So if I look at that straight up and down, which I don't know if you can get a good angle on it, but okay, so it is dried overnight. We'll put on our last fin, and then we'll let it dry. So like before, just a little bit of glue on that edge and stick it down here. There. Seal, and we'll just kind of pull it off and just kind of dab that around so we got a good coverage, no blank spots. And then we'll just set that there. And set that there. Give it a couple minutes and we'll let it dry, and we'll come back. Okay, so this is pretty much dried. That is pretty much dried. So we're just going to add our next little bead of glue on here, the fin. And like I said, it doesn't need to be very much. So just have a real light thin layer of glue. And we'll stick that on there. Make sure it's the edge, it's lined up, and then we'll look down it. So from where I'm at, right there, looks like it's straight up and down to me. Okay, and then we got that little bead of glue here, and we're just going to wipe it down so that it's not all bunched up and kind of gooey looking. So we got those there, and now since I've got these two fins down here, it will help keep it upright. I'll just lay it back in here, come back in a couple hours after that's completely dried, and we'll go to the next part. So this has been drying for a while. It's on there well enough for us to do a little extra work, because we're going to let some other things dry while we're doing other things. So here's our launch lug line. I don't know if it shows up there, but we have this little line that when we wrapped it, it's there. So, and we need to mount our launch lug. This lets it go up to the little rod that when we launch it, it flies straight till it's got enough speed that it's aerodynamically stable. So on our directions, it says to mark it 1 3/4 inches up. So from the bottom of our thing, we'll just lay that in there, and 1 3/4 is right there. And we'll just make a little mark, and we'll just set that right there for a second. And in here, this little looks like a straw, because it pretty much is a straw. It's just a coated one. Is our launch lug. Okay, and we're just going to put a little bead of glue on one side of it, and like our fins, we're going to take and line it up so it's straight up and down the rocket. And this, if you put glue on it, I just put my fingers on the end because you don't want any glue on the inside, and just touch it down, and there's probably about 1/8 of an inch gap between both ends and the glue, and then we just turn it over so our glue is ready to stick down on the one side. We turn our rocket. So here's my launch lug line and my little mark, and I'm just going to set that right there like that, and then I'm going to look and turn it and adjust it so that it's straight up and down with my rocket. It follows my line that I drew on there. So we now have that lined up with our rocket. And then like before, and this will roll a little bit because it's a straw, we're going to take, and this one, if there's a little glue sticking out, that's fine, because I'll show you what we're going to do with that and the fins in addition to after this all dries. Okay, so in this one, we're just going to take and set back in here, and I've turned it a little bit, and we're just going to let that dry. So a couple hours from now, that will be dry, and then we'll do the next part. So it's been a little while since I've let these dry, and so all our fins are on, so we can actually take this and set it upright, and voila, it's an upright rocket. Now we're going to take and strengthen these fins so they don't break off. And again, this is just one of those little things that only takes a minute to do, but then we have to wait for the glue to dry. So what we're going to do is lay a little bead in here right along the fin edge, and you don't have to go all the way down. Gotta get my glue down there. So I'm going to start right there, just lay just a little bit of a bead, and then we'll do on this side too. And I've done it about 3/4 of the way down that whole fin. Now the reason for that, these are called fillets, and we're going to take and basically just run our finger. You can be fancy if you want and use a popsicle stick, but finger's just as fast. And we're just going to take and just run it along there, and that's just going to force us. And I'm going to get some right up at the very front, and it just puts it down in there and leaves us a nice clean edge along our fin. And then on this one, I just wipe that extra glue I had on my finger right at the very front, and then we just run that down, and just kind of gentle pressure. Again, my table with my paper on it is just where I run my extra glue on my finger. So now, if you look, we now have a nice little bead of glue along both of those. And then we just set this back here and let it dry. And that will take another hour or so, but that will strengthen those fins on there a lot. It gives the glue a lot more surface area to adhere to. So then we'll just let that dry and do the next little part. Continuing on, we're going to take and do our little fillets along these two edges here, and then I'm going to just skip forward doing these other two. That way the video will be a little shorter, but we're just going to put a little glue there and there, and then I'll do these ones later and those ones later. So that's the plan, and then we'll jump ahead. So again, I'm just going to lay a little bead of glue here, just dab, and then what this is going to do is strengthen our bond between our launch lug and our rocket. And it doesn't need to be much glue. And the important thing is that we don't get glue inside the launch lug here or here. So I'm just going to take and squeeze that along there. So I just need a little bead and wipe that extra glue off. And just wipe a little extra glue off, okay? So we'll let that dry, and then I will do the same to this section here and this section here, and then we'll jump to the next part. So just set this back in my little thing and just let it dry. So easy enough. So it's been a little while since I've let these dry, and so all our fins are on. So we can actually take this and set it upright, and voila, it's an upright rocket. Now we're going to take and strengthen these fins so they don't break off. And again, this is just one of those little things. It only takes a minute to do, but then we have to wait for the glue to dry. So what we're going to do is lay a little bead in here right along the fin edge, and you don't have to go all the way down. Gotta get my glue down there. So I'm going to start right there, just lay just a little bit of a bead, and then we'll do on this side too. And I've done it about 3/4 of the way down that whole fin. Now the reason for that, these are called fillets, and we're going to take and basically just run our finger. You can be fancy if you want and use a popsicle stick, but finger's just as fast. And we're just going to take and just run it along there, and that's just going to force us. And I'm going to get some right up at the very front, and it just puts it down in there and leaves us a nice clean edge along our fin. And then on this one, I just wipe that extra glue I had on my finger right at the very front, and then we just run that down, and just kind of gentle pressure. Again, my table with my paper on it is just where I run my extra glue on my finger. So now, if you look, we now have a nice little bead of glue along both of those. And then we just set this back here and let it dry. And that will take another hour or so, but that will strengthen those fins on there a lot. It gives the glue a lot more surface area to adhere to. So then we'll just let that dry and do the next little part. Continuing on, we're going to take and do our little fillets along these two edges here, and then I'm going to just skip forward doing these other two. That way the video will be a little shorter, but we're just going to put a little glue there and there, and then I'll do these ones later and those ones later. So that's the plan, and then we'll jump ahead. So again, I'm just going to lay a little bead of glue here, just dab, and then what this is going to do is strengthen our bond between our launch lug and our rocket. And it doesn't need to be much glue. And the important thing is that we don't get glue inside the launch lug here or here. So I'm just going to take and squeeze that along there. So I just need a little bead and wipe that extra glue off. And I'm just wiping a little extra glue off, okay? So we'll let that dry, and then I will do the same to this section here and this section here, and then we'll jump to the next part. So just set this back in my little thing and just let it dry. So easy enough. So I have finished doing all the fillets on the other ones, so fillets are all done on all of them. Now we're going to take and install the motor. So in your directions it says we need to put some glue inside the motor, or inside the body tube, 1.5 inches in. So just using our scrap wood from where our fins are, we'll just mark a little 1.5 inches there. So right there. That's how far we need to go up inside our motor. Now we really don't need anything that wide, we just need to be able to dab some glue up in there. So I'm just going to split this. And balsa cuts really nicely. So we're just going to take and put a little glob of glue there and put it inside our body tube that far. So we'll just be doing this kind of maneuver and putting glue all around there. So that is the plan. So we will just want a little bit of glue. We don't need a ton up inside, but enough to hold that motor mount securely. So there'll be a couple daubs of this. So just reach in there and then just up along the edge, pull it out, and we'll just do that a couple times, and then we'll just run that little stick around on the inside to make sure we got a nice little cover all the way around. And I think one more should be ample. And I can look up in there and see, and I can see I got glue on one spot and on another, so I'm just going to sit here and twist the rocket around a little. So if I look up in there, you can see kind of that gloss in there, and if I turn it, there's gloss all the way around. That's the wet glue. Okay, so second that's in, then we take our rocket motor, and we got to make sure this is our engine hook. This sticks out of the rocket, and we measured that 3/8 of an inch earlier, so there's my little mark for it, and that will go even with the rocket here. So I just put this in, slide it up there, I can feel it hitting the glue, and I just push it in until I hit that little 3/8 mark. So that sticks out 3/8 of an inch, and then I can just set this upright and just let that dry. Okay, and if you want, you can twist it a little bit, but already that glue's starting to set, so it's where it needs to be. So we're just going to set that there and let that dry, and then we'll come back and do the last little part, and then we're done building our rocket. So that's been drying for a little while, and we're just going to take and do the next little section. So in our directions, this is where we cut out our fin guide earlier, and this is what we'll cut out next. So let's trim it up. And it doesn't need to be exact because we're just going to be gluing it on the inside of the rocket. So it's just this little piece of paper with some numbers on it. Basically, we're going to take this, and in our little plastic where our parachute's at is our little rubber band, and we're going to take our rubber band and we're going to put glue here. We're going to put our rubber band there, and if you want to tie a little knot, you can. That will just add a little more grip for it. So I got just a little knot there, and I want that kind of towards the end, so I'll trim just a little off. So that's there. Okay, and then this is where it's, you got to do this all at the same time. Yeah, so I'm going to put just a little bit of glue here. And then I'm going to put a little bit of glue here. And we throw our little knot into here, and we fold our piece of paper over so it sticks that down to there, and then we do that again across there. Now you can't let this dry yet because we need to put it inside our rocket. Okay, so we're going to stick this with this side down inside our rocket. Now if you put it barely inside here, your nose cone isn't going to fit, so we need to put it down there quite a ways. And I think it says 3.8 centimeters because your nose cone sticks down from here that far in. So we're going to add just a little more glue on the outside here, and this is kind of sticky and gooey part of the whole thing because we only need a little bit on there. And then we're going to slide this inside our rocket, and it really doesn't matter where, just as long as we get it down in there a ways. And so we need at least almost 4 centimeters, about 2 inches, 2.5 inches, inch and a half I guess. So I'm going to take it to about my second knuckle, and then I push it against the wall of the rocket. And if I look in there, and I'll show you it, and I'm actually pushing it down a little farther deeper in there because I want it to be completely away from the nose cone section. Now my finger's got some goo on it, so we'll get rid of that. I'm going to bring this across just so it doesn't stick to the wall because I don't want it sticking to the wall. And there's a little extra glue I'm going to just get rid of. Don't want anything up there that's going to harden that would make it so we can't fit our nose cone in there. Okay, so that's in there a ways, and then we're going to just let this dry. And I'm going to take my little stick that I've been using, and I'm just going to push. That's too soft. Grab my popsicle stick, and or you can just use your finger. I just don't want glue all over my fingers again, so. And that's down in there, and I'm just going to. Okay, so that's way down in there. I don't know, but we needed at least that far. So if I look at this nose cone, I needed to have it at least that far farther down, and it is. So we're good. Okay, so while that's drying, we will take and show you what we do next. So our nose cone is one piece of plastic, And what we need to do is remove this little piece of plastic right here. So we got a thing to tie to. So if you just push through, and sometimes these will just pop out by themselves if you work with them just a little bit. You just need that little piece of plastic in there to pop out. And there we go. Just about out. There we go. I can get my little finger on it. There. So all we did was knock this little piece of plastic out here so that we have a hole. Okay, and then I'm just going to run my little knife along the inside just to get rid of that little ridge of hard plastic so that it's flat. There's nothing to be sharp. Okay, now on the other parts, this has got a seam on it. I'm just going to run my knife down it and just get rid of that seam just a little bit too. So, and you can sand these too. But what we do is we tie a knot here, and just a square knot's fine. We'll tie that on here in a minute. And our parachute goes on. So we'll open this up the rest of the way. And I just need to get these out so I can get to the strings. So you should have one set of strings, two sets of strings, three sets of strings. And if you bring them up, wrap them through one of your fingers so they're all looped, and then we should take that and loop it through there. Just push them through. So the second they're through, then we can open that hole up bigger, and then we just feed our parachute through that hole and make a lark's head knot, and there they go. It's just looped in there. Okay, and then we can tie our little square knot in here, and so we'll tie a little square knot. And since it's elastic, you can kind of pull on it quite a bit, just like that, and that's it. So you want this all down so it doesn't stick out to the side here, because this all has to fit inside that rocket body. Okay, and that's it. And then we just fold this back up, tuck those strings kind of inside, and then we fold this so it's really tight. We shove that down inside, put our nose cone on, and our rocket is done being built. So this will all fit down inside. Okay, but now we just let it dry and it's all done. That's it. Just build a rocket.